August 30th, 2025, 070000. The Odessa littoral is quiet. Wind on the water, gulls on the breakwater. Then 3 squat shapes roll onto a bare metal ramp and Ukraine stops being quiet. Flamingo cruise missiles, fat, low, and brutally simple, spool up and leave the shore in staggered bursts. 5 seconds apart, they skim east at treetop height, deliberately slow, almost daring the screen operators in Crimea to notice in time. At that exact hour, on the other side of the water, Russian commanders are rotating into morning briefs, helicopter aprons are warming, and a coastal patrol schedule is being inked in. The defender reads the picture as busy but normal. The attacker reads it as busy enough to hide a knife. The setup is older than warfare. Show the defender something boring, then break their rhythm. On paper, the defense of Crimea is layered, dense, and unforgiving. Long-range S-400s, medium batteries, point defense guns, coastal radars knitting a near-continuous picture. The safe bet is to stay away. Ukraine does the opposite. It primes the board with UJ-26 kamikaze drones, low-slung composite bodies with tiny radar cross-sections, and sends them from the northwest and northeast like dull sparks. Each one aimed not at grand targets, but at tiny seams in the network. Power cabinets, waveguides, field comms cabins. The goal is not blackout. The goal is delay. Seconds shaved off classification. A hesitation in correlation. The kind of human pause that makes the first shot arrive a beat too late. 45 to 50 minutes after takeoff, the first drones touch Crimean airspace. 2 get swatted. Pantsir/Tor batteries do their job, but 4 make it through. 1 detonates against the 96L6's power distribution cabinet. The radar stays upright, but its supply and processing chain hesitates. Another breaks the MR10's waveguide. The dish keeps rotating, the signal doesn't. To the humans in the loop, the picture is there and wrong at the same time. The most dangerous combination in air defense, because confirmation takes time, and time is exactly what the strike wave trades in. The drones aren't the story, they are the clearing of a throat. The flamingos are the shadow behind it. 3 flamingos, each around 7 metric tons, with a 1,150 kilogram penetrating warhead and roughly 3,000 kilometers of reach, fly like stubborn swans hugging the coastline. This is not a sprint. Subsonic, approximately 950 kilometers per hour, 15 to 30 meters above the sea or scrub, GNSS/INS fused in the tail. Radar altimeter cross-checking a digital terrain map every few milliseconds. If GNSS dies under jamming, the altimeter and terrain reference keep the solution alive. When GNSS returns, the accumulated error is flushed. Composite skins shrug at most jammers. Mass covers the rest. Nothing glamorous here, just a disciplined approach to an old problem. How to arrive with certainty. The calculus is brutal and clean. Low height buys horizon. Horizon buys seconds. Seconds buy impacts. Geometry is what beats famous acronyms. Targeting is split by function, not spectacle. Flamingo 1 is tasked against the command and communications room of the FSB border/intelligence complex at Armyansk. The objective is not to blow the facade into postcards, it's to erase the backbone. Power rails, network racks, cable trays, and the switching nodes that glue field units to headquarters. Flamingo 2 follows on the same complex, but aims at the fault line between the power management node and the field comms cabin. Miss one and you slow them. Hit both and you turn slow into silent. Flamingo 3 is reserved for the pierhead at Sevastopol, a small command cabin and a fuel manifold that together do more to keep boats moving than any concrete block ever did. Break those and the harbour is unsafe by doctrine, which is to say, unusable in the moment that matters. The terminal geometry unfolds fast. Flamingo 1 seats itself at 20 to 25 meters AGL, bleeds a hair of speed to make the fusing geometry happy, and strikes the concrete shell. Half a second later, the delayed fuse lets go inside the command room. Lights still glow, screens wake, but the network is silent. The most treacherous state in command and control, power without data, takes hold. Decision makers keep working a dead system, because it looks alive. Flamingo 2 sees a brief GNSS wobble 15 kilometers out, rides INS plus altimeter plus terrain tiles into the terminal, and then walks its energy into the junction between power and field comms. From the street, the complex looks fine. From the racks, it is a ruin. Administratively, the base remains a base. Operationally, it no longer has a voice. Down at the waterline, Flamingo 3 rides even lower, 15 to 20 meters, hugging clutter. The defense tries a backchase intercept. There's no clean front aspect within the radar horizon, and city reflections smear the Doppler filter. The missile climbs a few meters to clear the key edge, punches through the pier's small cabin, then the fuel manifold. The mooring piles kick out. One hovercraft patrol boat, A8 or A25 PS class, loses its connection and takes damage. The rest lose their refueling cycle. The practical effect is immediate and dull. Pilots call the harbour master and hear "stand by." Divers get tasked before boats get fueled, and the first sorties of the day are late or cancelled. Safe ports launch fast, unsafe ones hesitate. So why didn't the famous S-400 umbrella stop 3 big missiles that didn't even bother to be fast? Because physics doesn't argue, it waits. At 30 meters altitude, a fixed antenna on flat ground only sees a target at roughly 20 to 25 kilometers, the radar horizon. If your first good paint arrives with the target nearly overhead, you need a perfect firing solution to get a front intercept in that tiny window. Miss that, and you're chasing from behind with particle clouds that spread where the target was, not where it will be. Low altitude and constant speed also make a subsonic cruise missile look smaller than it is in Doppler filters. Add coastal reflections, and you get false tracks that foul the human loop. The system isn't weak, it's rushed, and rushed systems miss. Also, do not romanticize this. The margin was thin. 2 UJ-26s were shot down, a wave got delayed, the 96L6 showed instant partial recovery, a Tor battery threw 2 interceptors at Flamingo 1. If lock continuity had stabilized, a forward window might have opened. If GNSS jamming had coincided with the wrong gust, without a terrain cross-check, a strike could have landed tens of meters off and turned a functional kill into a scorch mark. The plan survives because every failure mode had a second string. Drones aimed at function, not fame. Missiles guided by overlapping methods. Timelines layered so a single hiccup did not sink the whole. In the end, no chain of errors formed. All 3 missiles hit. Damage assessment reads dry, and that's how you know it worked. Armyansk's border base keeps its walls, but loses its nervous system. The power distribution backbone is severed. The field comms cabin is burned. Terminals glow with no traffic. In Sevastopol, the pier head is cracked. The fuel line is severed. 1 patrol craft is out, and the rest lose the refuel loop for a period measured not in minutes, but in resets and workarounds. The visible city skyline is fine. The invisible functions that make sorties roll are not. That is the signature of a delayed fuse penetrator done right. Strategically, the lesson is simple. Layered shields are not static, they are queues. If you can force the queue to reorder for a handful of beats by hitting a power cabinet here, a waveguide there, and then presenting low altitude, low RCS profiles at the very moment the human loop is untangling is that real, you turn famous systems into rush systems, and rushed systems miss. The drones created dilution. The Flamingos exploited geometry. Time on target discipline put all 3 effects inside the same minute, so the defense could not stack attention on a single axis. This is not magic, it's choreography under pressure. For Crimea's defenders, recovery is possible but not quick. Redundant power and fiber paths must be built for the nodes that just failed. Mobile capture antennas should be added to hunt the low-altitude approach geometry. The recognition loop must assume a live screen, dead network as a default failure mode. Until then, the gaps open this morning won't stay on the clock. They'll spread across the calendar. The war doesn't stop when a building remains standing. It slows when the room inside can't talk to anything that moves. Minutes turn into hours, hours into days, and minutes into missed operations. This morning began with 3 stubby silhouettes pushing off a ramp and a handful of drones drawing pencil lines on a radar map. It ends with a headquarters that looks alive and cannot speak, and a harbour that looks intact and cannot work. Ukraine did not try to win the war in a minute. It tried to win a minute that the other side could not afford to lose, and succeeded. In modern war, the hardest question isn't how big is the missile, it's how precise is the minute. Pre-mission, the choreography looked mundane. The Flamingos were moved on heavy dollies, their fiberglass composite skins dull under tarps to avoid thermal contrast. Loading crews mated wing and tail sections, verified the INS alignment, and burned a timing profile into each mission computer, keyed to the same time on target window as the drones. The longer part wasn't fuel, it was checks. Terrain tiles were verified. Radar altimeter calibration was cross-checked against a shoreline survey, and failovers were rehearsed. The price of a low-altitude profile is that the only thing between you and a crane arm is a few milliseconds of altimeter truth. Crews treated those milliseconds like gold. Fly low, stay boring, trust the math. The UJ-26s, meanwhile, were the opposite of glamorous. 25 to 30 kilograms of high explosive in the nose, composite body, small electric motor, cruise at 150 to 180 kilometers per hour. Guidance was pragmatic, GNSS plus INS with an optical fallback for terminal mapping. Against the fortress, they didn't try to cut the lights to all of Crimea. They went hunting for the tiny things that make big nodes sluggish. Power cabinets, waveguides, fiber trunks, field comms sheds. If you blind the stage lights for a few seconds, the actor still knows his lines. If you break the soundboard, he cannot be heard. Drones don't win by spectacle. They win by changing the job the defender has to do in the seconds that matter. The audience is function. Ukraine chose function.
Minute 0, 0 to 10. Drone climb and settle. Surveillance links confirm antenna rotations and apron activity. Minute 20 to 30. First UJ-26S cross the line. PVO batteries wake. 2 kills. Minute 40 to 50. 4 impacts land like erasers. 1 on a 96L6 power cab, another on an MR10 waveguide, 2 on field side cabins. At minute 50, the Flamingos clear the low coast and fold into their final legs, still unseen by a complete picture, now entering a slightly confused one. At minute 60 to 62, first solid paints. At minute 63 to 65, late intercept attempts. 65 to 66, 3 terminals hit almost inside the same minute. The math is rude. 5 seconds between launches for the missiles, whole seconds shaved from the defender's loop by drones. Add those up and you get a time-on-target cluster that a busy morning cannot absorb. That is the only math that matters.
Warhead physics adds its own punctuation. A 1,150 kilogram delayed fuse penetrator is not bigger boom equals bigger hole, it is a promise. Survive skin, explode where the air lives. Pressure inside a room does different work than pressure on a wall. Inside, it travels along corridors, slams into corners, bounces and tears cable trays and rack faces, collapses ducting, and robs power at the taps. Outside, it makes dust and television. Inside, it ends work. That is why administrators can walk through Armyansk's lobby and believe things are fine, while operators in the back stare at dead switches. That is why repairs don't mean repainting. They mean tracing scorched wiring, silent behind intact drywall. That is why function lost becomes function lost for days. Because replacing a wall is a day's work, but proving a network is clean and safe is time measured in weeks, not shifts. Harbors are similar. You don't need to obliterate a key to make it unusable. You sever the fuel and the small brains that manage it. When Flamingo 3 cracked the head of the pier and ruptured the manifold, it did 3 things at once. Interrupted the refueling loop, dislodged moorings so boats couldn't trust their tie-downs, and forced safety to the front of every decision. Until divers have checked pilings and lines, until boom arms are replaced, until fuel contamination is cleared and fire codes sign off, commanders are not going to risk a boat and a crew. Harbors do not shout when they are down. They say, wait. In war, wait is defeat, written politely. Inside the Russian command chain, the psychological effect is oddly bureaucratic. Total blackouts are simple. Call backup, switch to alternate frequencies, run the binder. Partial failure is treacherous. With power on and screens alive, the habit is to keep issuing orders while staff chase ghosts in the network. The more minutes lost to one more reboot, One more patch, the more windows close elsewhere. The apron slot at Sevastopol, the morning coastal patrol along Sevastopol's approaches, the synchronization between artillery fires and drone eyes. Systems lie politely and then go silent again. And that gets us back to the geometry that made all of this possible. Low altitude is not magic. It is a set of trade-offs. Hugging 15 to 30 meters means lower detection ranges due to curvature, sea-cluttered Doppler returns, and urban reflection smear. It also means you are committing to steady subsonic profiles, careful altimeter discipline, and a tolerance for gusts that can throw you into lampposts and cranes. Flamingo's guidance stack, the triple redundancy of GNSS/INS/altimeter with a digital terrain map crosscheck, exists specifically to pay for those risks. From a screen, it looks like a small blip that never quite gets clean. From the ground, it looks like outcomes. Ukraine's side will not be static either. Expect route mixing to widen the approach vectors, even when the target set is close. Expect decoy flamingos that push electronic signatures without warheads. Expect drones to pivot from power cabinets toward the network nervous system. Field fiber junctions that are harder to guard than dishes. Expect too, the humility of redundancy. The difference between a clean hit and a near miss today was a handful of design decisions made months ago. Don't trust a single sensor. Don't chase theatrical targets. And never forget that the geometry doesn't care who argues hardest. It cares who respects the wind. Build in answers to both. Thanks for watching.